And now, the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we are here this week to talk about episode 615, Only by His Grace.
This is an episode of Adventures in Odyssey I am fond of.
Yeah, it's off album 48, The Moment of Truth. It's the album right before The Other Side of the Glass. Mm-hmm. And it's a good
You
one.
mean episode, not album. Same album as The Other Side of the Glass.
Yes, correct. It's the episode right before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm saying.
I can't relate to that at all. I am fully aware of all the words that come out of my mouth at all times.
Wow, I'm proud of you there.
Yeah, some might say it's next to godliness.
This episode is a tag team by two favorites of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. We have it written by Kathy Buchanan, directed by Nathan Hubler.
Just all-star cast. Ugh, it's so good. The writing is so good. Kathy, I don't understand how people could look at Kathy Buchanan and her history with the show and what she's been able to do and not have her be in charge of almost everything.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. It really, yeah. This is an episode that I think is very well written.
Mm-hmm.
Not in like just the characters are well written, but like the episode as a whole is well written, which is I feel like is not a thing we talk about often outside of like a McCusker mystery.
Yeah,
but it's a good script.
It's a really solid script. It flows very well. It feels cohesive despite having two very separate things going on, which is unique and fun, and Odyssey does not always do super well.
Yeah. It aired 5 months after the previous episode, or 6 months. Sorry, clean take. It aired 6 months after the previous episode we covered in this saga, so we got some distance there. So that was on May 5th, 2007, for those of you who really care. And I'm not going to get too into the cast on this one, just because, foreshadowing, maybe. At some point, I really want to cover Grady stuff.
Thank God. I really want to cover Grady stuff. I have that written in my notes.
And we can get into the actors who Jordan Orr, who plays Grady, and Mary Mouser, who plays Sam. We can get into them some point down the line. But I would like to call out the great performance Nathan Hubler turns in as Vern McDonald, the guy operating the hot air balloon.
That's Hubler.
That's Hubler, and I think he does a very good job.
When he explains how hot air balloons work a second time.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent delivery. Masterfully done, sir.
Mm-hmm. He's a man of many talents, that Nathan Hubler.
Mm-hmm. A renaissance man, as it were.
Huh. So they say. I don't know if there's anything else I really want to get out of the way before we get into it. Anything burning in your heart, Andrew?
Nothing except for the promo, Dylan.
All right. Well, I can take a hint, folks.
On the next Adventures in Odyssey, Mandy's parents face another setback as her father contemplates moving to Chicago. Mandy insists that her family will stay together. Meanwhile, Grady's Sunday school class is going on a really fun trip. But Grady knows he'll never be able to afford it. That is until he comes up with a clever scheme to get the money. Be sure to listen to the next Adventure in Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Clever and scheme. To describe what Grady does in this episode seems inappropriate.
You're giving the man too much credit.
Yeah. He has some sinister delivery on one line that I didn't even pick up on the first listen through.
I mean, yeah, is it clever? I don't know.
No, not at all. Considering, we'll get into it. Haha. You just got edged. Tag your friends to totally edge them.
It starts off with a downer of a recap.
Yeah.
And then elevator music.
Yeah, delightful elevator music. Interesting. Cutting to mini golf. It's just everything is bad, but they're playing mini golf, and so in that way, maybe it is effective.
Yeah.
It's Mandy and David and their dad. Mandy is just wiping the floor with the two of them in mini golf, as she should. She is the champion. She's the queen. She is a golftress.
She's canonically very good at mini golf.
Yeah.
Like, that's established in other episodes.
I think that we've covered, right?
Did we?
Is it in Novacom where he beats Alex Jefferson's record? I'm not sure.
I don't think so, but maybe. Who knows?
Oh.
I think no, it can't be. It can't be in Novacom. I don't think, unless it's in. Wait, is it in the one where he's got the mansion? All right, we really can't. Can't be caught up on this. But oh wait, the wiki to the rescue. It is not an episode we covered. However, it is on the Danger Signals album. So there's the association.
Okay. There it is.
And Mitch is
like
in it
one
as
of
well.
the two episodes we
And-
didn't cover
right.
on that album.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because, yeah, Arthur Dent's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch is in it. And somehow that was not one of ours.
We got to redux it, man. We got to go back for the mini golf arc.
Hey, look, we can do an Andrew's Choice sometime.
Yeah. Well,
The door is always open.
the scene in the hot air balloon in this episode did, and I've had this kind of floating around the noggin for maybe a couple months about just trying to visualize a map of Odyssey and keep track of all of the
yes.
Simpsons era business names. You know, but Hal's Diner, and there's the Bowl-O-Rama.
Yep.
And there's a mall, obviously, we've established, police station,
Right.
Wits
The
End,
mini
all that
golf
good
is
stuff.
in the mall.
Mini golf is in the mall?
Yep.
Like,
That is
that
what
a
was
thing?
set up in this episode. It's not where I'm from.
Yeah, not where I'm from either.
Who knows what the Midwest is wild.
It is. Well, I mean, the Midwest is famous for having a roller coaster inside of a mall, so I guess mini golf is probably much more manageable.
That's fair.
And David is thoroughly disinterested in mini golf. He's not having a good time, but it is better than the puppet show with hot dogs.
I don't even want to know.
I'm imagining a sort of like Halloween mummy in like hot dog in biscuit wrap, make it look like a mummy type situation. I don't know. Is that a cuisine you are familiar with?
Absolutely insane.
Like a pig's in the blanket.
It's insane that is how your mind works, Andrew.
That's fair.
My mind just shut off when I heard puppet show with hot dogs. I was like, nope, don't need that.
Well, because growing up, and for all the Acebos listening to this podcast, they will know, we used to put little black peppercorns in the hot dogs as eyeballs, and ruin the hot dog, because if you bite into a black peppercorn,
Yes,
you
Andrew.
don't have a good time. But that's part of the recipe.
Been there, done that.
Yup. 3 years in a row. Totally not my entire life. It was only 3 years.
Jeez. All right. So someone who's an Acebo or married to an Acebo, write in to tell me if that is true, because that is concerning to me.
All right, you got to be prepared. I mean, do we want to do another Call Colleen segment? Verify the hot dog
I forgot
cuisine.
we did that. That was very funny that one time. No, I don't think we need to repeat that bit, but it was a good bit. So, then they just like stop mid-game
Yeah,
to go to Wits
presumably,
End.
unless
I cannot understand this.
the gorilla hole is the last hole, which seems wrong and not like it's the case. But yeah, no, they do just kind of dip to go to Wits End to get ice cream because Dad said so, and David was bored. I'm
Yeah.
not entirely sure about that.
So when they're at Wits End, Stephen, the father, lets a bomb drop.
Yeah.
Which is they get in the car to go to Wits End, and Mandy's like, why do you have your bag packed? And he's like, well, I just got back from a trip to Chicago. where I had a job interview for this fancy veterinary place because I'm a veterinarian.
Apparently. Is that established before this?
Probably, but I didn't know it.
I didn't know it either. And he's gonna teach?
Also, I as a non-pet person who just doesn't know stuff, veterinarians are allowed to be referred to as doctor? Because that's very funny to me.
Yeah, pretty sure.
When, like, later he gets called Dr. Strasberg, and I was just like, oh, could you call a pet doctor a doctor?
Hey man, if
that's
you can
fun.
call somebody with a doctorate in philosophy a doctor.
Sure. No, I agree. Like, yeah, we have, I mean, I work in a school. There are plenty of people who you're supposed to refer to as doctor who don't, but it never occurred to me that a veterinarian would be one of those categories.
I was just in shock that he was a veterinarian. I was like, of all the potential careers, I thought he was just a finance bro. Like, I thought he was going for a business job. Then I hear he's going to work with a university that's like, he's going to work with a university that's super high up in the veterinary world. And then Mandy's like upset about it. And I'm like, rooting for David.
Sure. I mean, I understand Mandy's upsetness.
Oh, no, of course.
Yeah, so David is very excited about, this opportunity for his dad. He's stoked. He's like, oh, you get to go live in Chicago. Like, that's super cool. The job sounds awesome. You get to, like, teach, and you're at this really prestigious school. And Mandy is just, like, wrecked.
Yeah. Mandy's like, how could you leave? You said that you were going to work on this, which is obviously a very real and valid response to have to that news. Unfortunately, because Mandy's approach to the whole situation was very kind of one-sided, where divorce wasn't an option, moving away wasn't an option, like none of those were possible outcomes from the situation.
Yep.
The shock of it is much more severe, but it is devastating to hear Mandy so upset about it. Like, the range of emotions that you hear from Mandy in this episode is just wonderful and dynamic and moving.
Yep. No, it's so good, and yeah, it puts you in, like, you see things from her side so clearly.
Yes.
And that thing, I mean, I guess I can't, I'm just going to restate what you stated, so I'm just going to cut myself off.
Well, and the other thing is that it obviously transfers really well to the next scene, where David and Mandy get back to their house after mini golf, and they're talking about this big news, and their different perspectives become a lot more fleshed out.
Yeah. There's this moment where where David is going off about, like, how cool Chicago is in comparison to Odyssey, and he's like, the most interesting thing in Odyssey is this pothole that gets filled every summer. And I'm like, okay, funny joke, but as we have talked about many times in this show, like, Novacom, Blackguard, Green Ring, like, the amount
Odyssey is the center of the universe.
The amount of exciting things that happen. Like, Mandy is in Novacom episodes or around Novacom episodes.
Yes.
Like,
nothing ever happens in Odyssey except for that mind control that happened last summer.
Except someone tried to take over the world.
Yep, from Odyssey using Tom Riley's tower.
Headquartered in your town. Like, someone has created, the best computer simulation ever in your town. There are spies, and there was, there have been gangs, and, like, there's plenty of exciting stuff that is not the
just
pothole being
small
filled.
Town America, yeah.
Right. Like, I like Odyssey trying to have it both ways and be like, we're just like a podunk small town where everything in the world happens.
Yes, and the most important people in the world live.
Yeah. But yeah, it's David's kind of crux here, though, is like, he's putting his stake in it. He's choosing dad.
Yeah. I mean,
like, he's like, I've seen my friends go through this before. You have to pick between the two of them. I'm getting out of Odyssey. I'm going to go live in Chicago with dad.
And Mandy's obviously super upset about it, because she's like, why aren't you fighting for them to stay together? Like, in him choosing to respond that way, it feels more like betrayal to her, because she feels like she is fighting for the best possible outcome for the family.
Yeah, and she feels like she is the only one fighting for that.
Yes, 100%.
With this with her dad interviewing there, her mom being fully absent from this episode, and David doing his thing. Like,
she is.
She comes across, like, her feeling is no one else is fighting to keep this family together. It's just me.
Which is devastating. And it, like I said, it gives her such good range this episode with the breadth of emotions, because she ping-pongs from deep fear and despair to kind of naive hope and belief, and you hear the emotions that come with that mindset very clearly.
Yeah, and our next scene is her in prayer, just that things would be sped up.
Yeah.
That would just make it. She's like, I know you're not going to let them get a divorce, but if you could just speed it up, it would be easier.
Yeah.
And then she's like, but I guess at the end of the day, like, your timing is best.
Yeah.
Like, with a lot of reluctance.
Been there.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, wouldn't you mind just, I don't know, like pressing 1.5 times speed on that? But no.
Yeah.
Your timing's best. I can't control this.
Yep. And then the next scene, we get Grady. I was so excited for Grady to show up.
I'm glad that you have such a strong attachment to Grady, because I forgot that I did. But hearing these episodes, I'm reminded of, like, when Grady's mom gets a job and they get pizza, and, like, how exciting that scene is.
Yeah.
And the payoff for the audience, like, hearing his voice and all of that. I was like, oh, man, Grady is young. Grady is a completely different character. Like, Grady is still in the universe, but it's from a completely different perspective than the Mandys and the Marvins.
Yeah. And one of these days, like, we're gonna do like Grady episodes.
I hope so.
Because it's
there
also
aren't a ton, are there?
But I don't know. It's probably close to what we're doing here.
Yeah,
and we also get, like, Grady episodes are for the most part Wooten episodes.
Yeah, they are.
Sam is his sister. It rocks as well. Like, it's really good. And I just seeing
Grady's in the popsicle kit. Is that Grady?
No. That's Colby Cabrera.
Oh, Colby Cabrera.
Popsicle Cabrera, the weirdest kid in town.
Hey, if that was my title, I don't think I'd complain that much.
We can start it.
The weirdest kid in town.
Oh, I was just going to start calling you Popsicle.
Oh, that could work.
Popsicle Acebo, the weirdest kid in town.
All right, well, that's up to the Chalk Squad to perpetuate, so if I get on Twitter and I am tagged in a lot of Popsicle Acebo jargon, I will know it is stuck.
You'll change your Twitter name to Popsicle.
Oh, I will. I will in a heartbeat. I am not above that in any way.
Hold him to it, folks.
Please do.
If you're not on Twitter, this is a great reason to get on.
To harass a podcast.
Yep. But, he asked for it. So yeah, and then we find out Mandy's helping out in Wit's Sunday school class, just continuing to muddy the waters of Wit's Sunday school class, though, because Grady is so young, and Tamika last episode was in it, and it's like, did Wit just like change what grade he's teaching every like 6 months?
Either that, or they just have like all of the elementary school kids.
Right.
With what, like...
But the problem we talked about with Tamika is that, like, she is older than Marvin, and Marvin is Mandy's age.
Yeah.
And Mandy is canonically 12 in these episodes, I think.
Yeah. And Tamika...
Right.
No, not worth the energy.
Yep. So,
considering all the tangents we've gone on
also, there's
today.
like, there's no way Grady's class is memorizing 100 verses, right?
No way. He's in, like, first grade. Maybe second. I mean, his default is to run away from home.
Yeah, for sure. I would argue my pitch is, like, fourth grade.
Okay. All right. He could be a young fourth grader.
Third or fourth, and then, like, his sister is in, like, first.
Yeah. That's fair.
But
what do you think, like 2 years separate them? Like a second
probably
second and fourth?
Or maybe third and first.
Yeah.
We'll give it third and first. We'll get more into that when we do Grady someday.
Mm-hmm. Which you can totally tell we don't want to do at all.
Yeah, we'll never do it. Yeah, so Mandy's helping out with Wit's Sunday school class and also directing youth choir in like the main service, and she's part of the deaf ministry. And Grady is the one who brings up these things, which is just necessary for the scene, but feels weird that he's this like tiny kid keeping tabs on all the things that Mandy does.
Yeah. Like, Mandy, you do everything.
Yeah.
Grady, why do you care?
Right. And he's like, yeah, you're so involved. And Mandy's like, well, yeah, I like to be involved, and I think God likes it too. And you're like, oh,
there it is. Bring the G-Man in.
Now we understand where this episode's going. Grady, the class is going river rafting.
Yeah.
And
river tubing.
River tubing. My bad. River rafting's more fun to say.
Yes, and more fun in general.
Yeah. They're going river tubing on Trickle River. Did we know about Trickle River? Did you know about Trickle River?
No.
Because I didn't.
No. So my guess is Trickle River starts in Forest Mountain and goes down into Trickle Lake.
Something like that.
Presumably.
Or it comes out of Trickle Lake and goes down. I don't know. But I like your idea better.
We can hope.
But it's just, yeah. I
don't know how the Midwest mountains work.
Yeah. They're a forest.
And that's it.
Yeah. He sees that and gets really excited about it, and then flips over the back and is like, "Oh, it's gonna cost $40. I don't have that kind of money."
Yeah.
And that's where that scene ends. Mm-hmm. Grady being bummed, and then we go to the scene where Nathan Hubler's taking everyone up in a hot air balloon.
Yes.
They can see all of Odyssey up there.
What was this?
The house, the apartment building, and a bowling alley. All of Odyssey.
That Steven is very excited about because of his recent involvement.
Right.
He's joined a bowling league, the classic bachelor move.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly watched The Big Lebowski and thought, this is the play for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. You said what's the motivation here? Or
how did they end up in the hot air balloon? That seems awfully significant. Is that explained?
I mean, it's hinted at. So because the joke about the hot dog puppets, where he's like, I've got like they're bored.
Yes.
Or David's bored mini golfing.
Yeah.
And his dad's like, hey, I've got a friend who's got something that we can do that's fun next weekend when I have you again. And he says, oh, it's not the hot dogs in it.
Puppet.
But this is what it is.
It's a hot air balloon.
Steven is good friends with Vern.
Vern Hubler.
Vern McDonald.
And they have to get up at 4 a.m. because the winds are the most calm then, which I suppose that's got to be daily dependent, right? Like,
yeah, that doesn't seem like that's
no,
consistent. But maybe they were looking ahead at the weekend forecast and went, okay,
4
winds
a.m.
are going to be best at 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how wind works. I don't think anybody does.
It doesn't seem to be consistent.
But Mandy gets very excited when she finds out her dad signed up for a bowling league, because that means he's not going to leave. Mm-hmm. Why would you sign up for a bowling league where the season just started if you were going to move to Chicago?
Exactly. Duh.
I mean, it's a good question.
Another just throw some props towards the sound engineering for the hot air balloon. The bursts and everything of the flames sound great, and obviously we already made a comment earlier about the jokes between the hot air balloon conductor. Is it like a train? Is it a hot air balloon conductor, levitator, wizard? It's great, and as we previously stated, there's the cool kind of perspective widening as these scenes are given, where you can kind of tell, okay, they're getting higher and higher, and up they're seeing more and more. Oh, look, I can see this house. Oh, look, I can see this building. Cool Odyssey moment, cohesive universe thing. Mm-hmm. Mandy comments that bowling is great exercise, which I firmly disagree with. However,
but she doesn't believe it.
No.
She's trying to explain why she's so excited about her dad taking up bowling when she canonically hates bowling.
Does she canonically?
Established literally last episode, Andrew, because she goes bowling with the Washingtons, and her mom's like, you don't even like bowling or carrot cake, and she's like, yeah, you're right, I like ice cream cake and Monopoly. Remember, it's not even been a week.
I didn't remember it. I didn't pick up on that the first time, honestly.
Okay.
I remembered her not liking the carrot cake. I did not remember her not enjoying the bowling.
Yeah.
Because she was doing well.
Right. Anyways, so she's very excited about
And then
bowling.
Dad has to make a work call, which was annoying to me. Dad has to make a work
Look, dude,
call.
he's a very important veterinarian.
He is. There are definitely horses to be saved.
Look, dude, there's no rest for a doctor, especially if that doctor, is in charge of keeping alive the things people love most.
Money?
Pets, Andrew, pets.
Fair.
The joke was pets. So we then jump to a scene between Sam and Grady, which love Sam.
Yeah.
Great performances, great dynamic. Big fan of this. And Grady's talking about she finds the brochure and he is excited about it, but it's like, I can't actually go. Do you see how much money that costs? We'd never be able to afford that. And Sam's like, well, just ask Whit for the money. And he's like, no, that's rude. You can't just ask people for money. But what's not rude is if I trick him into giving me the money.
By being aggressively nice to him. An old-fashioned nice-off, as it were.
Yes. And at this point in the episode, I was like, man, is this... I don't know that I entirely... the weirdness of having a B plot in this episode. And then I think they really stick the landing on that.
No, they totally do. And I sympathize with you. I definitely was in the same situation.
Also, you just said a nice off. The previous episode to this one is Best of Enemies.
Oh, really?
Dead serious. A week prior,
Wow.
Best of Enemies came out. So apparently niceness was just in the air.
Niceness was in the air. There was a competitive spirit on the unpredicting winds, and this is what we got.
Yeah. So yeah, he runs around Wit's End, being semi helpful to Wit, taking people's stuff, mopping stuff, flooding stuff.
Yeah, shampoos the sheep. He mops the floor, basically floods it.
Yeah. That's basically it.
Yeah. There is just a question raised, and perhaps of the necessary questions, it's not one of them, but which shoes are mentioned, and I just wonder, does he have above average or below average feet size? I feel like he's
a little bit below.
Yeah, because he's shorter than Wooten. I mean, if you say average is 9.5, 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think 10 and a half is probably pretty average.
Yeah, so I feel like Wit's a 9 or an 8.5.
Maybe an 8.5. Yeah, no, I buy
in
that.
dress shoes, he stretches out.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm glad that we've established this, Chalk Squad. If you agree, let us know, and if you disagree,
send us some Wit's shoe fan art.
Yeah, I would love to see what.
If you disagree,
yeah. Also, some Wit shirtless tubing fan art. That was another thought.
I really had to think about what does Wit look like tubing. That is an uncomfortable thought. But before we get to that, we've got Mandy volunteering at the soup kitchen, which she's been doing 3 nights a week. And Wit's there. He's talking with her. He knows the people at the soup kitchen, which I really like.
Yeah. So great that Wit does that.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy. Good guy, Paul Hurley.
Yeah, I don't know that this is otherwise established, but it makes me really happy in this moment. That it's like, oh yeah, Wit just he knows people.
Mm-hmm. He knows people, and he knows people because he volunteers.
Yeah,
and one of the places he volunteers is the soup kitchen, which is cool.
and it's at this point at which the writing of this episode clicked for me, where I'm like, oh, the point of this is both stories are them trying to the characters trying to earn something through their works.
Yeah.
It is oh, if we do something good, we're going to get something in return. Mm-hmm. And I think it's rare that two stories in an episode converge like they don't overlap really, aside from the Mandy and Grady scene. Like that's kind of their like only crisscross. But they establish but they're going after the same idea and doing it in a way that feels relevant to both stories and doesn't feel like we had one of these figured out and then we shoehorned in another.
Yeah.
Like they parallel each other in really good ways.
And I just think it's hats off to the writing for it, because grace is a very complicated thing. And so when you talk about who we're extending grace to and when we're extending grace and why we're extending grace, those are a lot of big, important Christian questions that get thrown around a lot. And so this episode works because you can approach it from the perspective of Grady and from the perspective of Mandy and have two entirely different storylines going on simultaneously that have a somewhat similar theme that doesn't feel like shoehorned like so much of Odyssey does sometimes.
Right. It doesn't feel like they're forcing the theme in both stories, even though like they obviously are, because that's how writing works.
Yeah.
But like
they had to make the choice.
It comes off as organic. They feel two stories that are not the same but are cut from the same cloth, and all the character work is really good to go along with it.
Well, and the parallel families of
Yeah.
Sam and Grady and Mandy and David and all of that, like, I don't know, that cohesive nature, maybe community feel is just a better word for it, is something that I think is unique to this era of the show that is so strong.
Yeah, it's good here.
We got it last episode with like the next door neighbor thing, and to see that continue this episode, which I didn't know if it would or not, is really cool.
Yeah, and so Mandy and Whit have a conversation, and she talks about just being in a better mood because her dad planted tomatoes.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting that like she has yet another thing that she's latched onto. Like she doesn't tell Whit at all about the bowling. No. She's just like, she's very excited. She's like, he planted tomatoes. That means he's going to stay around because those take at least 2 months to grow, and he's not going to plant tomatoes and then go off. And I think it also is a nice tie-in to the previous episode where we established like gardening was a thing that Mandy did with her dad.
Yeah.
That she then translated into a thing she was doing with the Washingtons. But it's
it works really
well.
sweet, and you hear the hope in her voice, and you hear her defending her logic, and Whit being wiser and more understanding. Instead of doing the "let me tell you what's actually happening," doesn't do that. He just kind of asks her to better explain it and let her figure it out herself. Which is great. Stupendous. Like,
right. Good Whit episode through and through. That I will say, maybe my one thing in this episode that just didn't land quite right for me, this weird bit of the guy at the soup kitchen who always complains
about the paprika and the chili. I didn't get it. I listened through it twice, and I think it made the bit more confusing. Like
he starts out by saying like, man, the soup better have enough paprika this week. You know, it didn't have any last week. And then, he gets at the soup and he goes, oh man, it's got way too much paprika. And then he comes up later and is like, can I have some paprika?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know why this is here. It feels weird to be like, let's have somebody, like, it feels weird that the one guy we have at the soup kitchen is complaining.
Yeah. Our comic relief is the homeless guy. Just, it feels bad.
The homeless guy whining about
tarragon.
Whining about spices. It's just, it's a weird call.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure one of the other writers maybe got that shoehorned in.
It's, like I said, it's like the smallest of criticisms I have to like throw at this episode that I think is otherwise very well written. It just didn't work for me.
No, it just didn't track. I was just confused.
Yeah. And then, we jump back to Wit's End, and Grady dumps water all over the imagination station and runs away.
Yep, there is a flurry of electrical shorting noises, which were very satisfying.
Yeah,
and
and
he
Wit just being
runs away.
like, "Stay away!" Like, get back.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And then he just dips.
Yep.
In the classic little kid, I must run away.
Yeah. Well, and especially just like knowing Grady's background and
Yeah.
whatnot. He's not, in the most stable environment.
No, certainly.
And that's that whole scene.
Yeah, that's it. And then we go back to Mandy and David.
Where he has purchased a Chicago Bulls shirt.
Yep, because he's their newest fan, which sounded sarcastic, but like, I don't know.
How do you feel about the Bulls, Andrew?
Well, this season they're doing very well. They acquired some good players in free agency, so like as a franchise, I think they're on the uptick, but I don't know. They weren't super great before Michael Jordan, and they weren't great after Michael Jordan, so yada yada. I'm a Pistons fan, so I think I'm just inherently supposed to have negative bias towards all the other Midwest teams.
Hey, I mean, there you go. So, yeah, David calls Mandy out in this scene. Kind of comes after her for being goody two shoes, and like he's like convinced
You're trying to impress God, is what
well.
she says.
So at first he thinks that she's trying to like be the perfect child for mom and dad.
Yeah.
And then he like slowly pieces it. He's like, no, they don't even know about most of the stuff I'm doing. He's like, oh, I got it. You're trying to impress God. And she's like, no, that would be ridiculous. Like, it doesn't work like that. But she knows.
Yeah.
It's a great performance by Aria Curzon.
Well, and also, even if she doesn't know, she probably is just figuring it out now, if she didn't know before.
I think the way it's played is she knows all of this is folly deep down.
Yeah.
But is in a situation where she is powerless. And this is something that she thinks she can do.
Yeah.
Because throughout the whole thing, and that's what the like montage recap at the beginning is everyone in her life telling her like, I know you're powerless. There's nothing you can do here. Just pray. And this is her going, okay, I've been praying for a while and I still feel helpless. What can I do if I can't have an effect? Like if the past couple episodes showed I can't affect my parents' relationship, can I affect God?
That's excellent analysis, Dylan. Well done.
I mean, it's good writing, and I think it's terribly relatable.
Oh, 100%. No, I am surprised at the level of vulnerability that they give that train of thought as far as being able to kind of earn God's affection, because I don't know. I mean, at least for me growing up, I felt like there was a sort of cause and effect relationship where it's like you do the good things, you tithe, and then the good things happen to you. And when the bad things happen, oh, well, it doesn't last forever. You won't feel like this forever. And, granted, forever is a long time, but like there was no accounting for sustained suffering, I should say. Within the theological framework. Whereas, and so when you see Mandy responding and saying, I did everything I was supposed to do, like, yeah. So, story time. When I was 12, my grandfather died of a freak heart attack, and when he was on the car home from a restaurant where we had like a big family dinner with everybody, and so I was already home, and when I found out that he had a heart attack and went to the hospital, I went downstairs and started praying and listening to worship music and doing everything that I thought that I was supposed to do. Stunning turn of events. He died, right? And so Mandy saying, I did everything I was supposed to do. I completely understand that, where it's like, okay, when you are raised to believe that you have these perfect spiritual tools that will solve your problems if properly used or channeled or whatever, then when that is not achieved, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And I don't know if that's on the institution or on the way that it's communicated or whatever. or that it's even inherently bad, like in the sense that it could just be naivety of youth and whatever. I mean, I was 12.
Yeah, I mean, right. You have stuff like the prosperity gospel, which is like an amplification of that sort of messaging, which is genuinely terrible and harmful.
Yeah.
I think, the thing that's so hard is, I don't know, we all, like, and I say this as like a staunch individualist who's like real big on like that sort of just like doing things on your own and that sort of a mentality and whatnot. But that like reckoning with like, I mean, bigger picture free will, but even like smaller picture, just like when things are out of your control and there's a version of the gospel that is easy to slip into, that is, I can't control this thing, but God controls this thing, and I can win God's favor.
Yeah, and I can get God to do what I want.
Right, and it's so easy to get there because you're just looking for any way to be able to like run things and not just be,
well, not to mention it's not a belief that is monopolized only by children. Like,
no,
there are plenty of adults that
I mean, in the fact that any time, like, there's I don't know, it's so tough to unravel because like on one hand, like like we have to believe that like what we're saying has, or like what we're praying about has an effect. And we see throughout scripture instances in which like God's mind is changed or things happen differently as a result of that. And even if you don't think that is the case, if that doesn't line up with your worldview, there's just like that kind of positive intent, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and like it's not going to make things worse. And like even just like spending time thinking about these things and yearning for something more is in its own way good. And obviously taken to extremes, nothing is good. But like, there is, I think that's not like the prayer as a way to try and influence the world. I don't think is a purely Christian thing. I don't think is a purely harmful thing. I think that's honestly like it's so, I'm struggling so much to put this into words, but like
it's very hard.
Like it is so good and also can do so much harm.
Yes.
Like it's the like putting faith that it's, I guess the trick is to do it in a way that puts faith in God and not in the prayer.
Well done. You should put that on Twitter.
I think I just crystallized it in the way that I was like trying to. But like, I think in the way that we've talked before about like, man, Christians have a tendency to make the Bible an idol. Like, prayer can be that too.
100%.
And that's what Mandy's doing in this episode. Is she throws in her little like, oh, but your will be done kind of caveats. But at the end of the day, like, she's not trusting God. She's trusting that like her works and this magical thing she's going to say. And I think that is incredibly well crystallized in that brilliant final scene, jumping ahead just a second, but that is her, and we'll talk about it more later, but her starting out with a rote prayer.
Yeah, with a I'm praying for dinner type prayer.
Right. And because like I need to pray for these things so that they will happen. And then she just breaks down and is like, all right, this is just going to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that like that is the key here is, hey, like, yeah, don't put your trust in the prayer to solve the thing.
Yeah.
Put your trust in God and, but I think it too, like, the part of the problem is that everyone around her has just been telling her to pray. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what else does she have to turn to in this moment?
And that's what that's what I was told. That's what everybody's told you. If you do the right thing, and especially as a child, I think it becomes easy to perceive prayer as a sort of channeling of power in your own life for spiritual purposes that can either be passed on to other relationships that you want to help other people or to help yourself. Whereas, at least for me, growing up and having a little bit more time, like, I see prayer more as like a very slow, formative, like, you're like a potter at a clay wheel type situation where you're gonna have to pass your hands a bunch of times before it takes the shape that you're gonna want it to, but every time you pass it, it is moving a little bit, and only the potter has the vision to see what it's going to become. And that's not something I came up with. That's from Brian Zahn. So there you go. Read his books.
There you go. Andrew, plugs by Andrew.
Plugs by Andrew.
So rewinding back to where we actually are. The
dad comes in.
Right. Stephen walks in and is like, "Hey guys, I took the job."
And Mandy obviously is very upset.
Yeah, because
Rightfully
once
so.
again, like, she feels like she's the only one who wants this anymore, and he says, like, this doesn't mean I've given up on things completely. Maybe a little distance will do some good. And she's just like, well, you had distance from one side of the town to the other, and, like, cannot see any path where this doesn't lead to ruin. And it also, it feels, it's very much Stephen making a decision for himself.
Yeah. 100%.
Which I think is, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not condemning him on that. I'm just like, this is like the decision you make when you're like, okay, like, I don't, I need to explore, or like, I am free to do what I want to do because of these circumstances. And this amazing opportunity came up, and I don't have to discuss it with my wife because we are separated.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing it.
Yeah. And I'm doing something that is genuinely positive and moves my career in a good direction. Like,
and I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Like, in a time where you get the idea that Stephen has not had a lot of joy for a year now.
Yeah.
Like, he now has something to be excited about. He has something that gives him purpose as well. Because, like,
that's unique to him, that is not contingent upon his familial relationships and his wife and all of that. And even the community that he moved to. I don't know if he grew up in Odyssey.
Sure, yeah. We don't know where he's from, but just that, like, he doesn't have as much tying him down. And you get the idea of, like, Manny's in middle school, David's later high school, like, they're going to be moving on in their lives here too before long. And he's already, like, usually you lose the marriage after the nest is emptied, but he's, a little ahead of the curve. But it's just, so it's this opportunity to kind of reset.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it's in line with his character. I think that if he was to talk to his therapist, they probably would have recommended him do the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to outright condemn this decision in the way Mandy is. I also don't know that it's the right decision for him in this moment. Like, every situation is different, and, like, I'd love to sit down with Stephen and have a conversation and figure out, like,
At a
what
diner for an hour and 20 minutes.
Figure out what his reasoning is there. Like, how did he get to this place? What counsel, like, we don't get to see that because we're watching this from Mandy's perspective. But I'm like, I don't want to outright condemn Steven and be like, oh, he's doing like this selfish move and abandoning his family.
And so he's running
because I don't.
away.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like, to the writing's credit, like, it doesn't feel like that's the way they're playing it either.
No, not at all. No, because, I mean, at least just showing his excitement about it and considering the way that their relationship is, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. They could have made it much more clear that it was not a good idea for him to take that position if they had wanted to.
Right. Like, a worse version of the show would have condemned that in the thing.
Yeah. For being just what it was. It's like, oh, you're leaving your family. It doesn't matter what you were doing. That is wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that's what the show's doing here, and I appreciate it for that.
Anywho,
we then jump across town to the other story, which is Grady's packing up to run away
with a popsicle.
Yep, which is the best joke. Like, popsicle's so good because it's like, it's not a long-term thing. No. Like, it's the worst food to pack.
It has the amount of foresight as a child trying to run away.
yes. It's great. And then Whit knocks on the door, and he quick goes and hides in a cabinet. Sam answers the door, and she's playing
Hilarious.
dumb in just such a cute,
adorable,
kid.
violently adorable.
Yeah.
Pull out my hair, take all of my money. It's fine.
And so Whit is like, if Grady's making noise back in the cabinet, once again, great sound design. And Whit's just kind of like, if Grady ever wants to come out of that cabinet, I'm not actually mad with him. And Sam's like, oh yeah, I did lie.
Like, sorry, I lied.
Yep.
Please forgive me. Like, it's fine.
Yes.
It's probably hard to breathe in that cabinet. And then he falls out of the cabinet, which is, again, great sound.
Yeah. It's very Jace Mouse.
Yes. And then it is revealed that in the brochure that was handed to Grady, Whit had purchased his ticket for him because he already knew that his family was having issues, which is something that is established in the Grady arc, which is so cool.
Yeah. And Whit's good, and I just was like, man, this is...
And then Sam has to search through the...
Grady starts searching through the garbage, finds Sam's green beans. And then Sam's like, oh, I have the brochure taped up in my room. I wanted to keep it because it looked cool. And I was like, I love Sam. This is great.
We do love bulletin boards.
Mm-hmm. And it is such a solid metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it really, really sings here. And Whit talks about, like, Grady's like, even after all I did, you still want me to go on this trip? Like, I clearly don't deserve it. And he's like, it's not about you deserving it. I just wanted you to go on the trip.
Because I wanted you, Grady, to be there.
Right.
Because it's not about your wealth. It's about who you are as a person.
Yeah. And it's not about what you did. Mm-hmm. Like, Whit thought that Grady had found the ticket and then was sucking up to him. Yeah. Right, was feeling guilty. And so he decided to do all this extra stuff because of that. Grady didn't know he had the ticket. It was just trying to earn it through his works.
Yeah.
And in both instances, right, and then destroyed the Imagination Station, which, like, I don't care about, like, the cost of the Imagination Station. That's fine. Yeah. Like, you were trying to help. Mm-hmm. Whatever your motivations, and, like, here is the ticket. Like, you get to go. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I love it.
No, it's amazing.
We, like, make fun of Whit as God constantly.
Yes.
But
when God is showing grace,
but it works here on this metaphorical level. And then I think that the next scene at the water park, Whit then kind of, like, lands the plane and makes the translation in the episode of this not being his will but God's, kind of.
Oh,
in a way that 100%. Rocks.
Yeah, no. Well, and he talks about grace in the previous scene and kind of explains it as a concept, just like, what does that word mean, sort of thing. And then kind of goes into it a little bit more in that scene, but it really, like you said, is in the river tubing scene where they're floating down together, and presumably shirtless Wit is talking to Grady about Grace.
I don't know,
and
dude, he might wear a rash guard.
I hope
Modesty
so.
is the best policy.
It is the best policy, and I'm guessing he's pretty fair-skinned, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Whatever skin is showing, it's probably thoroughly covered in sunscreen.
Yeah.
Yep. And, but yeah, and he kind of explains that, like, what the relationship between grace and salvation is, and just grace as it relates to Jesus and everything, which is obviously so central to the character and the person and the deity of Christ. It's really cool to have something so central, so important, so complicated be distilled down into a genuinely good, digestible bit that can be understood from multiple angles and multiple situations for children.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that would be hard for a TV show for adults to do. But the fact that this episode does it so well for 8 to 12-year-olds is just dynamite.
And because they have this second storyline where they can explain it, they don't have to have Wit sit down and have this conversation with Mandy, which is so important.
Yeah.
Because one, like, for her story right now, she needs that isolation. But two, like, she's an older character who's figuring this stuff out on her own.
As she should.
Right. In like a way that is really good and really compelling.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that, like, we get to have both of these POV characters and Wit interacts with both of them. But, like, the one who he, like, breaks everything down in a way that is more geared towards children is the one who is more of a child.
Yeah, and in Batty, like I said, he doesn't tell her what to do. He teases her thought processes so it leads, like...
Yeah,
he is not telling her where the water is. He's just kind of reminding her that she might be thirsty at some point.
Yeah, like, no, for sure.
Yeah, and as we said, this final scene is stupendous. It begins with Mandy's nightly prayer, and it says, like, thank you for this day. I pray that you would help my parents to get back together. And then she pauses for a really long time, and you can tell she's thinking about it. And then she breaks down, and she decides to pray for clarity and understand what is the point, what's the timetable, like what is happening here,
and not even just pray. I think the conversational aspect of it is so important to underline here, because it's easy to be like, yeah, and then she like prayed for something better, but it's like no, she started like talking and like letting the things that she was dealing with bubble to the surface, rather than just going through the motions and saying the magic words that are going to solve her problems. It's like, hey, look, my problems aren't being solved, and that's really tough for me, and I just need to be open about that. And I don't know if you're going to solve them or how you're going to solve them, but like, I need to express that I'm struggling here.
Yeah, and I need to talk like I talk, not like what I think you want to hear, which is where she gets, like, I think it goes out on, like, I had a really bad day, God.
Yeah.
And that just got me.
Agreed.
That was the knockout blow that just put me in my feels. I feel like we could write a book on this episode. I've said everything I want to say, but it's so good.
I've said my piece too, but I'm just very happy with this episode.
91% seems a bit light on the wiki.
This has been Andrew's theme this whole series, is just going on to the wiki and being like, look, you guys give 100% to worse episodes than this. Come on.
Yeah. Come on, you're off by 4 percentage points. You need to fix this now.
Andrew, I want to do a little something here.
Yes, go for it.
Do you have any predictions for this 2-part conclusion? Be okay with being wrong on the podcast.
Yes, I'm very okay with being wrong on the podcast. I have a lot of practice with that. I think... I hope they don't stay together. I think they probably will. Maybe not. I don't know. Okay. Final answer. Locking it in. They get separated.
Okay.
They get separated. David moves away. The events of this episode that are foretold don't come completely to fruition. Maybe he stays in Odyssey, doesn't go to Chicago. Maybe he goes to Chicago and then comes back and just takes a different job. But prediction, they don't get back together.
All right. You heard it here first, folks.
Dylan already knows, so he doesn't get to predict.
Yeah, I would love to hop in with predictions, but unfortunately, that's not my lot in this show.
Not on this episode.
The other thing that I think is really interesting to underline, so this is coming from the official guide.
Oh, wonderful.
The original title of this episode was Fall from Grace. And the final scene featured Mandy giving up on church because her parents weren't reconciling. After they recorded and produced that ending, and then decided they wanted to go more positive, rewrote the scene, brought Arya Curzon back in a few weeks before the show ended to record the new ending, and then changed the name to Only by His Grace.
Interesting. I for once, I think kind of appreciate the revisions.
I agree. Like, I don't think that would have made this a worse episode by any means. I think that's still, we would have had plenty of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, they do that in a newer episode of Odyssey that I just pretty recently listened to, and I thought they did a good job with it. So.
Yeah, and like I think that there's plenty of stuff they could mine there, and obviously, it depends on where they want to end with this story as well. But I do think it is. I love that final scene so much that it kind of bums me out to think about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that it was to end the other way with her being like, well, clearly this isn't working.
Yeah, because I think it's both. I understand them wanting a more positive, sure, but I think it's also more powerful if Mandy comes out on the other end and is like, I still don't know what is going on or how to deal with this, but like I'm letting go of, but I'm going to stop trying to control it a little bit.
Yes.
And like, I think that is the more meaningful and relatable.
It's more compelling, I think.
Than like her being like, okay, things aren't working out, I'm throwing in the towel.
Yeah, it's to make an episode analogy, it's like Grady running away from the problem and then realizing he was wrong and then running back, as opposed to Mandy, who is experiencing this difficulty and she just kind of sits with it, and accepts that there's good and bad and everything. And so it's not so much about her doing things that she wanted to do or didn't want to do or whatever, or doing the wrong thing, and more about just how she's processing these emotions.
Right. I think it makes Mandy more relatable in the episode if she struggles with this stuff but doesn't leave than if she does, because I think that, or at least it makes it more relatable to me. Because that's more in line with my experience, is wrestling with all this stuff, but still at the end of the day, landing in a place of like, yes, but it is like important to me, and like I do like. Yeah,
I cannot deny it feels viscerally impossible for me to deny this, but
that doesn't mean that in the day to day, I fully believe.
Yeah, and so you just get a different type of story. You don't get the prodigal son run away, come back. You get I'm staying at home.
You get my relationship with God is growing deeper through this hard time.
Yes,
which cooler
And-
message, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, and engaging with God in the difficulty, I think, is, biblically commended, and that's like the correct course of action. So
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right.
that being said, very excited to cover that 2-part finale.
yeah.
I'm sure it will be very exciting.
Yeah.
Probably deeply upsetting. I'm not sure. Is there a Chris warning that we know about?
I don't know offhand.
All
but,
right. Well,
But yeah, unless you've got anything else to jump in with, we're going to be back next week to talk about episode 626, Life in the Third Person, Part 1.
bye, guys.
Bye.
Wad Fam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at WadFamChalkPod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. Only by His Grace was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.